Or you're just talking, and then especially if we don't, like in this case, you guys don't know each other, but like a lot of times, like Tina and I might not know the person at all, right? Or like, well, vice versa. Tina knows the person, I don't know the person, so it's always like, well, you might get some good stuff in there in the beginning anyway. So
That's right. I just had the funniest thing happen that my boyfriend just got a new boss, and he did a podcast with Ben and I.
Oh, yes.
And his boss listened
your
to
boyfriend.
it. My boyfriend,
yes,
my boyfriend Ramy did a podcast with us about cybersecurity. And his boss listened to it before he met him for the first time, and that was the text I received. And I was like, "Oh no!" Because honestly, like we do podcasts, and I'm like, "What did we talk about?" I know we talked about cybersecurity, but again, like we tend to talk about all kinds of things.
Yeah.
So who's to say?
Yeah.
I'm sure we talked about, our first date and our friend who set us up definitely. And, all of the things and, the insane stories I would tell about going on dates with random strangers when, before I met him. And so I'm sure it was a crash course in,
yes.
I was like, oh, well, great. Hopefully I'll never meet him. Or perhaps we have gained a new listener. Who's to say?
Well, it was all worth it if that's what it was used for, it feels like,
that's
in
right.
my mind.
That's right.
Valerie, by the way, she's leaving out an important detail here. As part of the story, the first date they went on, mind you, first date, this is a mutual friend set them up. Okay, so a mutual friend of ours and a mutual friend of Ramy's.
And a friend of the podcast.
Set them up. And so they meet for dinner or whatever, and then he's like, well, you want to come back to my apartment or something? Somehow they got like
it was the next date, our second date.
Our next date. Come to my apartment. Okay, great. Comes to the apartment.
Because it was during COVID, so we couldn't go out. It wasn't like I go to,
there's plastic all over. Like, have you ever seen they ever seen the show Dexter? And he
had no furniture.
Oh.
Yeah. I was like,
I'm like, I think I would have walked back out. I've been like, I think I'm good. You know what?
But I realized Kevin would not set me up to be murdered. So
Dexter seems like a nice guy too. I mean, there's that.
I don't think that was real. But
bar's low.
Everything was...
Don't get murdered.
Bars, yeah,
that's right.
Exactly. Bar's low. Just don't get murdered on the first date. Well, you didn't, anyways.
I know. Here
long
I am.
story. Yeah, sorry.
All is well.
You're good.
Still together
right.
For all these years.
And how long you been married since that first date?
Oh, not married.
Oh,
bite your tongue. No.
Sorry,
Valerie. How dare you? No, we're still together.
No M word, please. No M word.
5 almost. Well, more than 5.5 years. 5.5 years now. So yes, a true COVID love story. My mother was like, "How did you get a boyfriend during shutdown?" I was like, "Well," she's like, "You didn't manage to do that in all those other years." But it's like,
doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. That's an irrelevant question.
That's how love works, Mom.
Exactly. You can't tell when or where.
That's right. You never know.
All right, everybody. We have a esteemed guest. Valerie has joined us. She is also a podcast host and has been in the industry for, I'm not going to say how long. You've been in the industry for a little bit. You guys haven't met each other, so might as well do introductions since you guys haven't met each other. We'll just start there. I don't know.
All right. You want me to go first, Tina?
Yeah, let's do it.
Tell me all about yourself.
I will tell you. I'll try to do the 50,000-foot flyover. So I have been in the industry for well over 30 years. I'm one of those crazy people who, the minute I stepped on campus at the University of Kentucky, I knew I wanted to work in the business side of healthcare. So I worked my way through college as an emergency room registrar, which, I always say I've got 30 plus years of experience, but it's because I actually volunteered at the University of Kentucky Medical Center at admitting before I got a job in the emergency department. Spent the first 8 years of my career in the Big Six. Most of that was with Deloitte. Then I worked for a couple different health systems. I left after 9/11. I had no intentions of leaving Deloitte. Loved it. They were great to me. But after 9/11, newborn, 2-year-old, you're like, okay, I think I'm going to get off the road. I went over to DeKalb Regional Healthcare System here in Atlanta, and I was their executive director of contracting and revenue management. Then I was recruited and went over to St. Joseph's Hospital of Atlanta when they were part of Catholic Health East, and I was their VP of Revenue Cycle. I also went over to QHR. I was their VP of Revenue Cycle back in the day when we had 160 hospitals in 48 states. And then after that, and for the past 12-ish years, I have been in consulting. I actually took a 1-year hiatus and was the SVP of Revenue Cycle Transformation for Optum and left in February and have gone out on my own, which is something I have been wanting to do probably for at least a decade. So that's a little bit about me. 2 kids. The 0 and 2-year-old are now 25 and 27. So time flies when you're having fun.
Good for you, and congratulations on going out on your own. I'm proud of you. It's a doozy of a step,
leap.
but boy,
yeah, it's a leap.
is.
But one I've been wanting to take and toying with for 10 years. So every now and then you're like, okay, if I'm going to do it, now's the time.
Right. It's one of those what if I fall, but what if I fly kind of questions, right? I did the same thing. Like 8 years ago, I was like, what if I just do this by myself? And what happens? Turns out it works out just fine.
It does.
I don't know. Turns out works out. Sometimes things just happen to be okay. So I don't know. There's so much to know about me. I do not have at all a healthcare. I don't know. How did I end up here?
Oh, okay.
No, I was a publicist, mostly working in hospitality and entertainment in my career.
The movie industry.
I worked in
premieres.
I was a film publicist for studios like Walt Disney Pictures and Sony Pictures Entertainment. I had 3 children, and when I had that third one, working in film, you work a lot of weekends and nights and things like that. So I didn't really have the capacity to have 3 little kids and do that. So I decided to be a stay-at-home mom for a little while. But during the course of that, the film industry came to Michigan, and we had big incentives, as they did in Atlanta, or they still do in Atlanta. And so I actually because I was very good at what I did, and I don't say that because I'm arrogant, but because
you can say
what I did.
Okay.
And so when there were projects that came through, the agency that I used to work for would call me if they were too small for the agency to take, and I would just pick up projects in that way. So 2 of my favorite things that happened in that part of my career is that I got to work on films that were shooting. And so my name is actually in film credits, which
that's
is
very cool.
I know. Thank you. Because it makes me really happy. And I have an IMDb page, which is in my married name. So it's hard to find, but it still exists. And it makes me very joyful. Because I love the movies and, makes me really happy. And then I got divorced, as that happens too. And I had to go back to work. And, but also in the process of my doing that smaller work, I also started working in publishing, because publishing houses, if you're a smaller author, if you're not, Stephen King or Nora Roberts or Michael Connelly, whomever, they don't put any money into publicizing your books. Like if you're a small author. So authors would come through and try to have agencies help them. And ultimately they don't have any money either because you're a writer and there's no money. So I ended up working with a lot of local writers to help publicize their books. And so I had a bit of that under my belt. So when I did start working with another local PR agency, they ended up working with David Farbman here in Detroit, who owns HealthRise, and he had written a book. And at the time, I didn't know anything about him or healthcare revenue cycle or anything other than he had written a book, a leadership book that needed PR, and no one in my agency had worked at all in publishing or on book PR or at all. So ultimately, I got the project. They were like, here, just take this and run with it, and here you go. So I was working with David. He was like, I have this company. You should come and work with me. I'm like that. And that's how it happened. So then I started working with David and doing writing with him and really building up what I was his, he was doing some public speaking and those kinds of things. So I was working on speeches and writing, and then worked on the brand for the other company. And then I met Ben Riegel, who taught me all about healthcare revenue cycle. Sat down and explained it to me, and I was like, this is
crazy
nonsense.
World we live in. Yeah.
I know. It's like, this doesn't even make any sense at all.
This is nonsense.
And I think that I still say that out loud regularly. This doesn't make any sense at all. But I think a lot of people feel the same way. And I think that's the thing. Everyone's trying to make sense of it, right? Like it's a constant battle of trying to work out the ends to the middle to get to a resolution. And so that was in 2014, and here we are.
Wow. So you're an expert by now.
Yeah. Well, I can write about it. I'll say that.
Yeah,
much.
exactly.
You've heard
enough
and
about
so
it.
I have. That's the gift I think, or curse I have been given, is that I can communicate about it pretty well, and I can write about it, and I can help people understand it in a way that helps my clients. So I've been really fortunate to work with Ben on Leaders Forum, and I still have, a handful of clients in healthcare. And then I also have some fun things that I do. I work with a local professional theater company, so that's really fun. So I still get to do some entertainment stuff. That's good for me. And I ghost for people in the world. So I write. Okay. I still get to write and do all of that too. So I have my hands in many things. And it's still a lot of fun. And I get to meet lots of fun people. And I think what I truly love, not only in doing the podcast but about this industry, is like I get to meet so many interesting people who, much like yourself, have like found their way into an industry that is challenging on a regular basis. And people are so invested and they care so much. And I just think that's really cool. Too often there's like so much apathy in the world. And I think the fact that there's still so much passion in this industry is really impressive.
I think if you stick with revenue cycle, Ben, you have to have a little bit of passion for wanting to stick through this. I say it's the puzzle you'll never solve because the picture is always changing, but the goal is to solve it as fast as you can. And if you don't go in it with that attitude and with a passion of like, hey, this is a game and we've just got to keep playing it, it's probably not the right one for somebody who wants to just kind of come in and do the same thing every day. Our industry is definitely not like that.
Yeah, to the nth degree, right? I also think I found like a community of people who I really liked and I think that and then when I started to do the forum stuff, I felt like it was something where I was like, oh, I can serve these people in a way because honestly, Valerie, you were in one of those jobs, the VP of Rev Cycle, like, is that the hardest job in the in the health system? Like, it's one of, and so I think that group is just, and we've seen it over the last 8 years we've been doing the forum. I think that group is like, they're up against it. It's not an easy, and some people are opting to like, why am I doing this? And I can't blame them. It's like, it's hard. So I do see my role as more, I don't know how I'd love to hear your thoughts on like how it's changed over time. Like I've seen my role changing over time of being like, I was the consultant, I was the operator, and now I see my role as more like, how do I help these guys, A, not get burned out, probably on the one hand, and B, make it into this next phase, which is, is it feels probably a little daunting, exciting, but also daunting. It's like, whoa, this is like changing pretty quickly. So I'd be curious what over your span there.
Yeah, when I was VP of Revenue Cycle, I was like 32. So it's one of those things that was pretty young.
Energy.
Like
You're like, let's do this.
I think it was the good consultant in me, and I'm just like, yes, I want to do this. And it is a very underappreciated role. It's definitely changed. I think it's changed from just even the way we used to talk about things, right? I think Revenue Cycle was really just on the early stages. We were still transitioning from business office to patient financial services, to what we call it. And I think back then I was very tactical and I was very much focused on let's get the bills out the door, let's make sure they're correct. And I think the role has evolved for the VPs of Revenue Cycle to be far more strategic. I think they have to be strategic. I think sometimes the C-suite does not appreciate how much a revenue cycle leader can bring to the table. I used to say things all the time like, I'm not a strategist, but I know how we get paid. I'm not a strategist, but I know what the payers are going to do. And when you start embracing what we know about how we get paid and the payer's behavior, we are strategists and we need to be at the table. And I think my role and what I want to do, I'm on the downside of my career. 5, 10 more years is what I'm really wanting to do. I want to be an evangelist for revenue cycle. It should be a chief revenue officer position that reports up to the CEO. We are responsible for billions of dollars of cash flowing in and out, and we are in this wave of huge transformation. Agentic AI is probably one of the most exciting things that is happening this year. I mean, I've been dabbling with RPA and AI since 2016, but what's happened over the past 12 months is insane, and the pace of change is only going to accelerate. So I just want to be this evangelist and help revenue cycle leaders kind of advocate for what they need with their C-suite and with their board. So I think, to me, that's how their roles change. And then my role is, where I want it to be these next 5 years is kind of like you. I want to help these leaders get what they need and get the voice that they deserve. So,
do you think the CFO is helping or hurting in that process? Because I feel like sometimes, and I know it probably varies, right? Like there's great CFOs. Don't get me wrong. I'm probably more generalizing of like, do you feel the CFO is like feeling threatened by kind of like they don't really understand it typically? Like what 10% or 20% of them come through rev cycle, probably less. So they don't really understand it, and then they're being because what you're saying is right. Like I think the CRO should report to the CEO, but like that's not how it is in most organizations.
No, most organizations, they're still reporting up to the CFO. And I've often said that by the time the CFO or most CFOs get responsibility for the rev cycle, they're very high up, right? And we have grown up in these crazy processes, Tina, that we can't explain to the average human who's like, that's how it works. And so by the time they get there, they've missed out on a lot of the learning, the muscle memory that we've had for 10, 15 years of learning the underlying process that drive that cash number, or that underlying process that drives, that number on the balance sheet. And so I think they're at a disadvantage because they've come up ticking and tying balance sheets and income statements and doing things with bonds and all that great stuff that I don't want to do because it bores me. And we're over here excited about this, and they don't necessarily understand all the complexities under it. I'll give you a great example. So back in my time when I was at St. Joseph's, my CFO had come to me and said, hey, Valerie, I really want you to focus on bad debt. I'm like, on it, right? On it. I love a good bad debt problem.
Sure.
So here I am. I'm in financial counseling. I'm in the front end. I'm looking at everything we were doing. And he comes to me, he goes, I thought you were going to do something about bad debt. I said, I am. We're adding all these things. We did a lot of great things. We were doing estimates back in the day. I mean, we're talking early 2000s estimates. We had a financial loan program. We were reevaluating our charity care and our self-pay and all these other programs. And what he wanted was me to hire a consulting firm to pound the bad debt, right? Let's bring in a firm that's going to work that bad debt to try to convert it to cash. I'm like, oh, well, let's take it from 2 points. Like, okay, I can do that, but that's a Band-Aid. I'm trying to prevent it from becoming bad debt. He wanted me to convert the bad debt. So we were looking at it through 2 completely different lenses. I don't think either of us were wrong together. It was the right, let's pound the bad debt and turn it into cash and get better firms in, but let's try to prevent it from the get-go.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. It's kind of like if you don't fully understand all the levers to be pulled, right, you're gonna kind of like question stuff that you don't necessarily know the answer or don't even know a question to ask. Like this is often the issue. It's just a fascinating kind of approach. I also think the CFO job has changed dramatically over the years, where they were probably less and less. Well, more and more, I would say the new version of the CFO is probably a lot more involved in operations than they ever were.
I agree.
Like clinical operations. And they should be. And the old CFOs that I knew when I worked in the hospitals, like they didn't have anything to do with it, right? They wouldn't even touch it. It was cost reporting and you know what I mean? Like none of that stuff, like, yeah, that stuff is happening, but it's like the new CFO is probably like should be a lot more involved in operations. But I also think the CIO role has changed, think back to like my days 25 years ago when I was in the health system is like, I'm no offense to that person. That CIO couldn't even begin to imagine what it looks like today. But some of those people are in the same spots.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I mean, the
think about that.
CIO,
Like, think how much has
it's,
changed in the last 5 years, let alone
yeah.
like 10, 15 years.
Yeah, if you think of all the systems that they have to manage and then the pace of change and yeah, all the roles have significantly changed as they should. Sometimes though, we're a little slow to actually really change. So that's the part where we've just got to be careful is that we are we are evolving as fast as the world's evolving. Sometimes we're a little slow to catch up to things.
What do you think about the CIO role? Is like, what's the ideal for future health system? What does that role look like? What are they responsible for?
You know, it's that's a tough question. I want to see it as more of a partnership. So I am seeing in some organizations where the CIOs maybe have too much control of the rev cycle or operations, right? Because what we are doing now is becoming more technical, and we could have a whole episode on RPA, AI, and agentic AI,
For
and
sure.
just because it's technology foundation doesn't mean it lives in IT. We've got to figure out how we make sure that the leaders across the organization can do what they need to do, whether that's building digital workers or maintaining the tables and things like that. But I have seen some organizations where they are 100% in control of decisions, and that creates these huge bottlenecks and delays in actually doing anything to the point where operators give up asking, right? They just go in a queue and it doesn't go anywhere. So I think I'd like
Right.
to see that CIO role evolve as more of a partnership with revenue cycle leaders and operators and see how they can enable us to do our jobs better because they understand what we're doing. So they probably need to get a little bit more in operations than they have been, like the CFOs, because they are becoming part of our operations at a level that we haven't had before. And I do get worried, when I talk to organizations, I'm like, this we have to have governance. I'm all about a good governance structure, but we have to have federated models where these organizations can be in control of their own decisions so that we can advance and evolve.
Yeah. Otherwise, it just gets stuck.
Yeah, otherwise it's just
I
a
mean,
bottleneck and we're going to be the same hospital we were in 1990.
yeah, for sure. I mean, also, it's like, I think in the same vein, we've turned into tech companies
Yeah,
providing
100%.
care, right? So it's like we were just providing care and we had this technology. I almost think it's like now it's like you have to think about it the other way. We're like a tech company that's providing care. There's just so much
100%.
technology
Yeah.
and so much data, and probably to your passion around cybersecurity, because I think that's what I ultimately wanted to talk about. At least let's talk about a little bit. Is like, do you think do you think the cybersecurity issues are catching this the right way? Do you think CIOs are prepared for the onslaught of what's happening? I would say what's coming, but that's not true. It's already
It's
happening.
here. I would say just like everything, it's going to vary. I think there's some health systems that are probably doing as much as they can around prevention. I think there are some that are exposed because they are just not ready and don't really appreciate the risk landscape that we have. But I would say even the most prepared health system is not really ready for what a catastrophic cyber attack would do to their operations. So I think we've been so focused on prevention, and that's where everybody CISO is talking about. And sometimes I don't necessarily connect real well with a CISO because I'm saying you do what you've got to do about prevention, but I want to talk about the day when it happens. What are we going to do? And I think these tabletop exercises that we do are great. I think they're very clinically focused. I think people really do not understand what's at risk when it comes to financial and revenue cycle. And I think we're too scared to talk about it. The hospitals that have been through it, their attorneys don't want them going out and talking about it for fear of being sued. So we don't hear how
Isn't that
really
crazy?
painful it is. It is. I know. I'm
I've
just like,
tried to have multiple people on to talk about because obviously we know individuals that have been affected. Missy Fleeman's the only one, and she didn't come on the podcast. She just came to our event, and that was 5 years ago, right?
yeah.
Like,
No, they
you can't
don't.
get
Like we
anyone
have
to come
to.
on now.
They don't want to talk. They're not allowed to talk about it. I've talked
Yeah.
to executives. I'm like, can you get permission? They're like, nope, they're so scared of being sued. And so, I feel like they're all doing the best they can. I would say some organizations, some here locally in Atlanta, I would say they're doing a great job around prevention, but I think we're all falling short on, okay, the day has happened, you walk in and your EHR is down, your internet's down, your phone lines are down, now what? And I just think that's the part where I really want to again use the word evangelize to people. I've helped organizations through this. I've done risk assessments in the revenue cycle. I think this is if I'm sitting back at St. Joseph's as the VP of revenue cycle, I'm probably petrified that day is going to happen, and I'm not ready, right? Like, and I'm going to, and
Sure.
you're too busy firefighting daily operations to really put some intention around a project. Going, okay, what do we need to do to make sure that we're protecting the revenue and the financial health of the health system while the clinicians are, protecting the patients when that happens. So that's really where I think all of us are not ready. And we've got to get there.
But do you think the feedback loop, like you just talked about, they're not able to talk about it? So a lot of things, most everything in RevCycle, like I think like Tarpon's a good example. Like we've been able to prove that health systems want to share with each other on RevCycle, right? Like that that is a thing. So, but in this case, I do think it's fascinating because where there isn't a feedback loop of like, here's what happened to us, and everyone should learn from this. Because they aren't disclosing information. Even the change thing. I mean, I'm not gonna bring up your old employer, but I like even that thing. They were not transparent about what actually happened. In fact, we've never heard the full story. So it's kind of like, well, you can't really learn. All you can do is the maintenance, is the preventative piece, right? But like to your point, you haven't learned because hearing Missy talk about her experience after like going through it, and I don't know, you probably haven't heard her talk, but like a couple things. One was like they didn't have enough paper,
right?
So they had to they had to call the Staples like regional manager to get paper at 2 a.m. I mean, it's insane, right? They got everything back up and started entering everything back up to the system that they restored. But they had never done user acceptance testing of the restore. So they got everything in, and they started realizing like a few days later that accounts had like they'd put in like Benjamin and it'd be BEN4AMAN or some weird stuff, right? And they'd be like, "What is happening?" So they had to shut down again on their own for like 5 days to get like it back up, and then they had to redo all the inputs of like the previous 3 weeks, and she's like, it was like a nightmare.
We've not really stress tests. Like when you do these tabletop exercises, they're great. And
when you say tabletop exercise, what do you mean? Like I don't know that term.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of health systems will actually run these fake drills where they'll get executives around the table and they'll simulate a downtime, and everybody goes through what would you do. That's great. That's such a controlled environment, but it's really not stress tests. We helped a health system that was a 17 hospital system, Epic Shop, 14 days on paper. There's a health system right now up in the Northeast, Meditech Shop, just was 30 days on paper. And what I will tell you is that even though they had Epic and they had downtime boxes and they had things in place, when you lost your internet and you lost your phones and you lost all ability to communicate, what you had was 17 hospitals figuring out how to do business independently, flowing into a centralized revenue cycle. When it came back up, you had every department kind of coming up on their own. What are we going to do about documentation? What are we doing about charge capture? There were huge issues. It ended up taking over 30 weeks and 50 outside resources to comb through medical records, to make sure we had legal medical records, valid orders that were signed, dated, and time-stamped, charges that maybe did get captured. Were they supported in the documentation? More importantly, what was documented that didn't get captured? And then about 75% of all the charts we touched had issues with pharmacy and capturing charges and reading the handwriting
Sure.
on the MAR, and
Right.
everybody's turning it around. It was
Insane.
pure chaos, and there was no documentation of charging protocols. So essentially, my team was the first one on site, so we were the first 5 of the 50, and we're like, okay, and I remember calling her going, we have a problem. I said, unless you want to be engaged with me for the next 10 years, we do not have enough people, and this is a bigger problem than any of us ever anticipated, because it was just, we had no charging protocols. We're creating them on the fly. We'd get through charts, then we'd realize something else, and we'd have to go back and re-review the charts again, and then just trying to make sure we were capturing everything. And then several of their hospitals were 340B, so capturing the pharmacy was even more important. And I think that's the stuff that people don't talk about. And my team in particular spent a lot of time helping the head of revenue integrity educate the C-suite. So a couple things, and then I'll pause, but I think the initial idea was these clinical departments will enter their own charges. No. Once the systems are restored and their patients start coming in again, we can barely get them to enter their charges. Normal
Right,
state,
when normal
they're not entering 14
Right.
days of missing charges. So it got dumped on, revenue integrity. And then the C-suite is like, why aren't these bills getting out the door? So we were putting together a lot of analytics for them to show the number of issues that was going on with these claims, and we didn't want to push them through. But then last thing, you had subsystems that were purging the results before because their memory was gone, and we didn't have, and so that's not coming over. I mean, I could probably go on and on and on about all the things you need to think about, because we spent a year trying to restore claims for a 2-week downtime. And that's where people scratch their head, like, how does a 2-week downtime in an Epic shop that has downtime boxes and all these things in place lead to 30 plus weeks of chaos? But it did.
Have you seen the show The Pit yet?
Yes.
Did you watch season 2? Okay, so you saw they Tina, if you haven't seen it.
Yes, I've seen it.
Oh, well, there you go. Well, they for everyone else, they did like probably 3 shows that had like cybersecurity downtime, and it was great because they brought. Everyone they brought this older woman who was like retired and
the
charge nurse, right?
Yeah.
And she was like just gruff and hated technology, right? But she knew how to run all the old stuff, right? And they were like pulling out a fax machine and trying to send orders through a fax, and then most of the residents had no idea what it was. You know, it's like this is.
That's why this is so true, though. When I was working my way through college, our bed board was a literal board, and we would move the patient's card almost like library dual decimal. So I could go back to paper.
I definitely had that.
Yeah, I lived in a world where we would digitize paper to make an electronic record, but there's a lot of people who have never lived in a pre-EHR land and don't understand. And then we have become very reliant on our EHR, and a lot of these clinicians don't really even see all that's going on underneath that then drives our revenue cycle or drives it to a complete halt. So, I mean, that's the part where I remember sharing with the director saying, I don't want you to feel bad, because I would be in the same situation you are right now. Because when we would do downtime drills, I would be hyper focused on patient access and the ability to register the patient, get that account number, get that medical record number. I never thought to question, okay, lab, okay, pharmacy, okay, 4South, what's your plan? And then when I get that semi truck full of paper, what's my plan and how am I going to get that back in the system? I never thought about it, but that's the unfortunate reality that we're in, is we have to think about, because it's going to happen. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, the DOJ has said it. It's not if, it's when. American Hospital Association says you need to prepare for 30 days on paper. American Hospital Association and Joint Commission are now partnering, but again, they're partnering on clinical. I'm just like, what about us? We're always in the always in the sidecar, right? We're like, what about us?
So has anyone thought about this part? You're like, no. Oh, what? Like, we're just trying to get patients. Yeah, exactly. It's like trying to get patients through.
Yeah, I mean, which again, we've all said that revenue cycle. We're so used to taking a back seat. I've always said, if I was going toe to toe for $1 in the budget, I was always going to lose to clinical, always.
Always.
And I understood that. So my point. And, a lot of people, my job was to say how $1 invested in the revenue cycle would mean $5 back to the organization so that they could invest it. And I think we're just not being thought of. We're not talking about it. And I really want people I do want them to be scared. I want them to be scared enough to say, this needs to be a priority. If my organization is not doing it, I, as a revenue cycle leader and a good steward for what I was hired to do, need to really think about that catastrophic event that I pray never happens, right? And what am I going to do? It's kind of like, hopefully you'll never have a fire in your house, but what's your exit strategy with your kids? How are you going to, get them out? And you probably have insurance and all these different things. I tell this story. So I had gone to Nashville for a meeting, and super cold, like 20 degrees. But I got up at 4 a.m. wanting to drive back to Atlanta, and my car was like my key lock wouldn't open, like because it was frozen. And I tell everybody,
you're like, what is this?
Yeah,
because you're not from this area.
And the backup plan is like to read the manual, and it's in the car that's frozen, so I can't get it. Then I'm on the internet trying to find, and I had, then I'm getting the guy at the front desk who happened to be a mechanic, and he's like, he couldn't figure out how to open up my car with my key fob, and we had to wait for the dealership to open up, and I sat there for several hours waiting for the dealership and my car to thaw. But I use that as an analogy as like, what is your downtime plan? If your downtime plan is on your shared drive and your whole system goes down, like that's a problem. If you lost your EHR, your internet, and your phone, and you can't pick up the phone and call, hey, Ben, where was that downtime? And we don't print anything anymore. I've done risk assessments, and departments are so proud. They have no paper. We have no paper. And
it's
I'm like,
what if you didn't have that though? Like, what would you do?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's people don't
and
think
they usually go, well, maybe we would. And a lot of people, like here in Georgia, so I did one risk assessment. They realized they didn't have enough legal prescription pads to last, say, a 4-week to 6-week downtime. And in the state of Georgia, they said it takes about 30 days to get a legal prescription pad. So the question is, what's the plan? Like, what's the plan for that? And of course, they've got to be very cautious with those and make sure they're protected, because you don't want that to get in the wrong hands. But where's the risk reward here is like, we've got to be prepared for that catastrophic event. And scenarios like that, like what would we do if we didn't have enough legal prescription pads to write orders on?
One of the that's great. One of the things that when Missy did that talk, we had like 30 leaders there or so. Of the 30 leaders, none had done user acceptance testing on bringing back up a system. Like, they had tested bringing back up the system, but none of them did UAT. So like, they were all like blown away. They're like, that should be a thing, right? It's like, oh my gosh. And I was just like on the back going, no one's ever done it. Like, this is
we
insane.
have a backup, but we've never actually opened the backup.
We never tested it. And then Rami told a story. So Tina's boyfriend, Rami, for a while, he was the chief, like, cybersecurity officer for GM for a while. So he's got a different role now, but so he's like an expert and was a former hacker and all this stuff, right? So ethical hacker, I think it's called, right?
He worked for some people,
He worked for some people. He's so funny. The
podcast
is hilarious. He's the best.
Because he's very vague.
He's very smart. Yeah, brilliant. Well, he said, well, at one time I was running this call center, and he's like, and so I'm running this is early in his career, but he's like, I have all the data for all the call center. It's a huge call center, right? He's like, so we'd have it on backups, and we'd test every month. Can we bring the backup up? So we'd do that. He goes, and then we had a downtime, and it was like 7 a.m. He's like, phones turn on at 8. We're trying to bring it up, and the phones come up. He's like, and then you can't bring it back up because it's like all these calls are coming in, and it's like, we never tested like during hours.
Yeah.
And so he's
exactly
like,
right.
He's like, this other thing where it's like, we never actually tested like during the time you actually would have the real problem. He's like, so it would always be off hours where no one's using the system. And he's like, well, people are using the system. You literally could not bring it back up. It would take 4 times as long. He's like, I was like, oh my God. It's like, those are things that people don't really they don't think about, but
they need, I mean, we're recommending like 2 times a year, you should be testing that process of, let's do it. And can we get the systems back up and all of that? But 2 funny stories. I was doing a revenue cycle cyber risk assessment, and we were in the ED when an unexpected downtime happened. They blamed us. We were like, we promised we were just here. Well, it was on the day shift and they did not know where the downtime computer was. We were just shadowing, taking notes. They finally found it in the break room behind a couple Christmas trees. The password was literally written on the computer, but then it didn't work. So by the time they called IT and finally IT got down there, the systems were restored. The second one was we were rounding and we were just asking questions about downtime protocols, downtime, and nobody knew where the downtime box was. They had to find the person who typically works on night shift because that's when we do scheduled downtime, and that person knew where the downtime box was to get things. So, we just don't think about what it's going to be like. And I loved that episode of The Pit when they we're going analog, and that is exactly how it felt when we were in the ED of that one health system and the systems went down unexpectedly. It was people running, right? They didn't have access to the board anymore. They had to make sure they were taking care of the patients. I mean, that was a very real depiction of what it could look like. So.
Or when it came back online, it was like, well, you got to get all your stuff in, or you got to scan
right?
this in. It was like, they were like, what? What do I have to do? Right? To your analogy before, it's like, it's dramatized, but it's still like, that's not that far from reality.
I was going to say, I think they did a really good job, and multiply that times 14 days, or that poor health system up in the Northeast that's got 30 days on paper. Like, I don't envy the situation that they're going to be in. What I hope is that enough organizations start to think about what it's, and you have to start with baby steps. I mean, I think my personal opinion is preparing for this. It's probably a multi-year journey, not to scare people, but I think we have to start with where are we today, and that's going to take a minute, and understand the importance of documenting charging protocols, but it's not a one-time thing, right? I mean, our world changes every single day. So every 6 months, are we maintaining the forms? Are they updated? My health system that I helped through, they'll tell you it was copies of copies of copies, and you could barely read, the form anymore. So, the first year, I think it's just really getting settled in, and it's kind of scary. And then you get into a rhythm where it's becoming part of muscle memory that this is something we're going to have to do on an ongoing basis. Our risk landscape, the thing that I want everybody to understand is, we are a good target. We'll pay the ransom. We're a critical infrastructure. We're part of whatever war that's going on because they know they can take us out. Taking out a health system, even if there was a health system in, I think, Idaho, like Gritman or something. It's tiny. Like, who would think Gritman would have a cyber attack? They did. So it's not just going to be the big boys. Everybody's
That's
at
right.
risk of going down because we'll pay the ransom and we're critical infrastructure. End of story. So accept that. But let's start to really buckle down and put together like everything. I think you need to have a plan, because if you don't, you're going to be so mired down with daily operations that this is just something that keeps getting pushed or kicked down the road, right? We'll get to it. And if you think IT is thinking about documentation and charge capture and what your revenue cycle is going to look like the day the systems come up, they're not. They're worried about clinical care, as they should be. We need to worry about our revenue and financial health.
I mean, the scarier version of all of this is that AI is going to make them even better and better.
It is.
And they don't have to man it. So it's like, yeah, the system in Idaho, they're probably getting 1,000 hits just through AI, right? And so that's the part that you're just like, oh my God, this is, because it's not just because Ramey's point was, it's like the part of the challenge we're up against in healthcare is that Silicon Valley is going to get the best engineers just by nature of it, right? And those people are going to be let's just say they're a level 12, a grade 12. Even if I hire 5 grade 5s, his point was it doesn't equate to a grade 12 person. It just doesn't. It's and those guys have them. But the reality is the scariest version of all of that is that actually AI makes that even 10 times worse. That a grade 12 person with AI is might as well be 10, 12 cubed or something. It's
always been an uneven playing field with what we get in terms of the high caliber people who stick with healthcare. I mean, you got to give credit to them, because this is a tough industry to stick with, right? I think a lot of times you don't get the high caliber people because we don't pay well. The ones that you do get come in it for passion, but then after a while, the ridiculousness of our industry will drive a lot of people away. And that's what I've seen over my career. And so it's uneven. Then I've always said clinical gets all the money. We get bubblegum and band-aids over here to hold our revenue cycle together, and we're pretty good at it, but it's not going to help us when we need to come back up. So you're right, we're not going to compete with people in Silicon Valley. They've got way better people, and it is scary. The FBI alerts are coming out almost every other day now about cyber attacks and what they're doing. I mean, there was one that was pushed out this past week about Teams and OneDrive and I don't know if it was Outlook, about how they're using AI and they're getting and you don't even know. They've now got your credentials and they're behind the scenes and they're accessing stuff. So it almost seems like every other day that we're getting an FBI alert about some risk because they're using AI faster than we're using it to prevent it.
Okay, so Valerie,
this
what's
is so hopeful. No,
I was going to ask a really terrible question, so we'll go as we're going down
go
the rabbit
ahead,
hole. We
Ben.
might as well go down.
Lay it on us. We're in such good headspace.
What's the scarier scenario? I'll give you two. The scarier scenario of is a cyber attack that actually works at Epic itself, or a cyber attack that hits like a major health system, or a cyber attack like a Change again, but at this time they get to real information. So the question is like, what's the scariest version of that?
I mean, honestly, the scariest version is Epic getting hit, in my opinion. I mean, we have become reliant on one major vendor in this industry. And if for some reason they were able to get in and lay low for 9 months and do a plan of attack, I mean, they could wipe out the healthcare industry in the United States. So to me, that's the scariest version. I hope Judy and team up there have recruited the best of the best to see how they can do it. So a relative of mine, he works in DC, and he's part of the team that is to prevent cyber attacks on the Department of Defense. And he's like, you do not even want to know how many times, I mean hundreds of times a day, we are preventing something. And it would be scary if the Department of Defense, and we will put Epic up there because we are so reliant on it. It's everything. They could really kill our industry.
Because I've always surmised that the Change attack, that those people actually didn't know what they were doing. And my theory was they were going through the systems and ran into one that had like a shit ton of data, right? And so it was like, what is this?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, let's take this data because it looks like a lot, right?
Yeah.
But just imagine, I was trying to always be like, just imagine if those people knew rev cycle and they knew what to go after.
Yeah.
Or knew what to like actually go attack. Like, that's a whole different world. Like, that's a whole different world of type of attack they could do, or the type of stuff they could get access to, right? So that's what scares me. I mean, Epic scares me the most out of all that. I'd agree. I wondered as like, because the Change thing kind of made it all like, yes, we'd heard about cyber attacks, but that made it very real for everybody, right?
Yeah.
Like, holy cats, this is going to affect so many things. It can cripple like people and health.
I think it
physician
showed us
offices and
how connected we really are. Well, and there was one a few weeks ago. I'm not sure. The partner will remain nameless, but they did not. I found out about it. Talked to a few of my clients who had them call and confirm. It is a major partner of the majority of health systems in this world. About 75% of people use this product, and a squatter had been in their environment for 9 days undetected. They didn't notify hospitals or health systems. It kind of happened by word of mouth. And so I was letting my clients know, going, they don't get the right to tell us when we shut off our pipes to receive information from them. We need to decide how big is this risk, because now we're accepting information. And I still think, again, I'm sure their attorneys told them, oh, and people were screenshotting the emails they were getting from their reps or calling me going, they are very tight-lipped about what's going on. And even the reps are getting, I mean, you can tell it's scripted from an attorney. I'm like, we are super interconnected, to your point. If people could figure out revenue cycle, they could do a lot of damage. I mean, Epic's one, but there's other major people that we all rely on that if they could figure out how to get in there and then infiltrate us, it would be bad.
We lost you for a little bit there, Valerie, but I think I got the gist of it.
I'm sorry.
No, that's all right.
I apologize.
You were cutting out, but I thought it would come back, and then it didn't come back exactly. But it'll be fine on the podcast. We'll figure it
out. Somebody will get art of editing there.
Someone is hacking this right now, and then that's what's actually happening. They heard...
Exactly.
Don't talk about it.
I was cut out for a reason. Conspiracy theory. Leave it in. That was a conspiracy theory. I was giving some great advice there on prevention, and
that's right.
Cut out.
You can't talk about Fight Club. That's right.
Awesome.
Did you like that reference, Tina? Did you like that?
I did. I liked it a lot.
Appreciate it.
It's the first rule. So I do have a question, and maybe this is a naive question, but when a cyber attack occurs and it causes all of this chaos and damage, at the end of the day, how is that cost covered to the system?
That's not a naive question. That's a great question, because everyone thinks they have the cybersecurity or cyber insurance, but Valerie, what does cyber insurance actually cover and what does it not cover?
Well, I can tell you that I know my health system was fighting with their cyber insurance because it was not covering a lot of the expense related to the recovery effort. So I think that's a great question that we have to ask our insurance companies about, what does this actually cover? Because like I said, I know a lot of the remediation efforts that we were going through, they were fighting, saying we have insurance, you should be paying for it, but the health system was at the time the one on the hook. So I think it's a question we have to ask.
Yeah. No, that's good.
So it's like if you have a good driving record, your insurance rates are better. So
yeah,
if you
it's
have
the
a
Allstate
good
thing
preparedness record,
yeah,
you have
yeah, it's like that. Well, Valerie, I think you and I should do a talk about it at some point where I just interview about this on stage. I think that would be fun. And we'll maybe get Rami in there, and we'll do a talk about cybersecurity. Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us, and we'll have to do it again. Let's talk again. It'd be fun.